recording here real quick and get right into it. So, first off, a bit of an agenda where first off, we'll discuss why AWS really cares about platform engineering, some of the market trends we noticed that led to us to this program of the Platform Strategy Program, which aims to alleviate many of these problems. And then we'll hand it over to Fairwinds to touch base on the technical aspects of the solution and how we'd be expanding with them, and touching base on the journey you would look like from picking their marketplace listing for their internal developer platform for the quick start. And we're going to make a large portion of this into a demo because everybody loves seeing a good demo. So one other just top of mind thing I'd like to mention is we're please feel free to ask any questions in chat along the way. We're happy to answer any questions and monitor the chat, and we'll leave a dedicated roughly 15 minutes or so towards the end for questions. So you'll also have extra time back there. And I'd also like to throw in some links into chat. I'll do it as we go through, but there'll be a link for the workshop link aspect that you'd expect to run through with Fairwinds if you'd like to move forward with it to get a better idea of the solution as a whole, if this webinar helps to pique your interest. And then there's also the open source repo this would be connected with that you can see on a more technical deep dive level. And there's also a reInvent branch that we have that the team has been getting into works that you'll see at reInvent, and I'll share the session ID and such that if you're at reInvent, feel free to give it a look. You'll see some of the newest changes that we'll work to add into main later on and things of that nature. And also, just to give a introduction of Fairwinds a bit, we identified them as a partner to help us expand for our customers, thanks to their expertise and experience in DevOps, EKS for Elastic Kubernetes Service, platform engineering, and Kubernetes. And now let's get right into why platform engineering, if you'll go to the next slide, and into the next one after that. So one Gartner report that I think really exemplifies it is platform engineering was noticed as one of the top strategic technology trends of 2024. And they predict that by 2026, 80% of software engineering organizations will establish platform teams. This is up from only 45% a few years prior in 2022. And in the next slide, I think a couple of analogies are a good way to get us started. So first off, an internal developer platform is truly a vehicle for workloads at its most fundamental level. It's like taking an 18-wheeler to deliver all of your packages and such, instead of taking, say, a bicycle, where you could only carry so much, not very standardized shipping container sizes, and you might drop it along the way and have to restart. Overall, it's a more consistent, secure, safe way of delivering your workloads, much like how the engineers would have golden paths to get to production as quickly as possible in a clean, safe manner, allowing for hyperproductivity to differentiate your workloads. Then on the second analogy front would be like a coffee machine, where the internal developer platform simplifies complex infrastructure for your developers. And it works much like how understanding all of the complexities that can go into, say, making a cup of coffee. If you can just say, I just want a certain amount of milk, certain size, and I don't want to know all these background details of how to make your coffee, just push a few buttons. It's presto made for you. You don't have to have all the knowledge of the baristas, but the baristas can go in the back, modify it a bit, customize it depending on the preferences of their users. And you can go push of a button, consume your new infrastructure, be that a pipeline, something else, just say like the name, where you'd like to put it, how big you'd like it to be, takes care of the rest. Really reduces training times and things of that nature. And on to the next slide, you'll see some questions that we were hearing from our customers, because we're customer obsessed, of course, here at Amazon and AWS. So from the application owner side of things, we saw questions like, how could we decrease our IT costs? The platform owners want to know, of course, how to decrease some downtime. On the DevOps side of things, they want to know, how can they provide a developer a personalized but standardized environment? Then the developers, they want to know, like, how could they deploy and test faster than before? All of these and more, as you can see on the screen, culminated into a lot of the key challenges that we're facing in platform engineering that I think fit these four key areas, as you'll see in the next slide, where we'll have problems with being overly permissive and inefficient resource utilization from not having proper access and guardrails for their developers, along with the service selection where they can struggle to manage and make sure they have passed a certain quality standards, so to speak, and track who deploys what for their service selection, all while having a difficult time getting the proper observability to accurately monitor the success of everything and how the developers are performing. And then, of course, adoption time is one of the biggest ones where it can genuinely take years to adopt and implement a platform. So we wanted to change that from months to months instead of years. And some specific challenges in the next slide you'll see are some homegrown DevOps glue that would constrain collaboration and extensibility. We noticed a lot of platforms they were trying to use, or without a platform, they were having some duplication efforts for their abstractions and workflows. They didn't have a single source of truth without a platform. They had a multitude of different APIs and UIs that differed per workload, and all of these just slowed down everything that we mentioned prior. And so the platform strategy program comes into play to try to help solve this. We'll skip forward a slide or two. Mm, This started out as a way to accelerate the build of our developer platforms with a very strategic investment by AWS, noticing this industry trend. And we spent a lot of time and headcount to develop this open source solution to try to grow it out into something big, much like other open source platforms we've done, similar to CDK EKS Blueprints, which is another open source project that we've had other large engineers, very experienced principals and such get it off the ground. And now that one got 30,000 downloads in December alone of last year. And it gets about 7 to 8,000 weekly downloads now. And we're aiming to get this one to grow to be just as big. And this is leveraging EKS as the base framework for context. So into the next slide, some more specifics, I guess, would be a good way of doing it for how the PSP initiative, or Platform Strategy Program for short, is it started as a collaboration between some industry leaders like Adobe, Autodesk, Twilio, Pfizer, and more. They all wanted to build out an internal developer platform to solve their challenges. Some challenges included some operational complexity in managing multiple Kubernetes clusters and diverse workloads. They had some difficulty in just maintaining some consistent security and compliance across their environments. They were also having trouble with reduced developer productivity due to this large, complex infrastructure that was only growing as they got larger. And then they had rising costs from inefficient resource utilization, culminating as well with some hurdles to implementing advanced features like GitOps, but doing it properly at scale. So out of a necessity to solve these challenges, grew more of an interest in platform engineering as an approach. So a great case study to show the effectiveness platform engineering as a technology can have is with Sony, where they had 60% reduction in operational costs, 5 times faster deployments, 93% reduction in time to market, with 109% year-over-year increase in net revenue as well. Their platform can now manage over 400 microservices with 4,000 plus deployments and virtually zero production incidents, all while reducing training time from 16 hours to only 3. With Sony as a shining example of what platform engineering can bring, it led to the PSP initiative to bring these advantages to as many customers as possible, lowering that barrier to entry so everyone can share in these incredible benefits platforms can bring. Which leads into the following slide of, I'd say, about 3 key points. So the first point of which, we go for it, was rapid adoption and lean maintenance, where the rapid adoption, being able to do it in months instead of years, unlocks the possibility of even adopting this for so many companies, to where they can get this hyper productivity, this cost savings and efficiency and security all along the way with best practices built in. All of which, including it being open source, allows it to, and AWS adding more features over time to it for free, leans out that maintenance where there's just less people truly needed to make it work compared to having a proprietary individualistic platform. Instead, working with an open source platform to customize it as needed, which then gets us into our second point for accelerated productivity and cost savings. Where, much like the 18-wheeler and coffee machine example, where having that 18-wheeler to help get your hyper productive golden paths, so to speak, along with some cost savings you get from doing it so much more efficient, not having to redo things and waste time. Then 3, we have the pre-built foundation and proactive scalability, where you're now able to scale when it matters most. Because many companies, since it's such a hurdle to adopt it, would adopt it when they need to rather than when they want to. because they'd have to go back, retrain everybody, figure this all out. It could take years. That's a tough thing. But if you can do it in months, you can get all these advantages without nearly as much of a hassle. And then once you grow to a bigger company that would have needed platform, you can catapult and keep that momentum going, and you don't have to take a step back to keep retraining. And now to the next slide, please. We're expanding this program for our customers through our partners. And I'm happy to bring Fairwinds here today to discuss with you how they're partnering with us to help bring the customer a better experience and grow out your own platform. Take it away, Andy.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli. Great introduction there, and great overview of what we're talking about here and what we're excited about here at Fairwinds. So, Fairwinds is a Kubernetes company. If you take one thing away about what we do, it is 100% Kubernetes all the time. We've been doing it for, like I said, about 9 years. And we help medium to large companies build, maintain, and optimize their infrastructure so that they can focus on deploying their applications rather than focusing on their infrastructure, which aligns perfectly with all of the things that Eli was just talking about, which is enabling developers to onboard more quickly, get applications out into the wild more quickly, and deploy them more rapidly in a way that is scalable and safe to avoid downtime over time. So that mission aligns really well with what we've done as a company for the last 9 years. And so we're really excited to roll this out. And I think I'm going to hand it off to Stevie to talk about what we are going to provide here as part of our Fairwinds IDP Quick Start.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so sort of riffing off of UPS, what can Fairwinds do for you in regards to an internal developer platform? So as Andy said, we are a Kubernetes company. So we began with, deploying a Kubernetes or an EKS cluster specifically, using standard, best practices. We're experts in building these clusters. So we start there, and from what we've learned from our years of experience doing that. And then we integrate some of the core workflow and infrastructure as code components that go into the actual internal developer platform portion of it. And I wanted to take a moment to level set about what these components are, and what they do, in case there are folks who haven't had a chance to really to look at some of them. So we'll start with Backstage, which is probably one of the most recognizable names in this whole thing. It was developed by Spotify, and Backstage is a UI that your developers, will be interacting with. It's like a catalog. So they'll go in and they'll select the thing that they want to create, whether it's their application, a CI/CD pipeline, an RDS instance, and they'll provide some parameters, and away it goes, and these things will be created. What's running behind the scenes that makes that possible is Kubevela. So Kubevela is a tool, an application delivery tool. It's built on the open application model, and you as a platform engineer would write these component definitions that essentially power what gets deployed into the Kubernetes cluster. So these are the manifests that define services, and they're essentially ingested, or the devs use Backstage to use those to create these services in your cluster. In addition, there's ACK, which actually stands for AWS Controllers for Kubernetes. And that is a way of deploying or provisioning, I should say, AWS services. So instead of using like a Terraform, you can use this ACK tool that uses the Kubernetes API to actually provision AWS services. And then lastly, there's the family of Argo things. And a lot of you are probably familiar with the Argo things because they're kind of ubiquitous with our field, right? There's Argo CD itself, which is the GitOps tool that syncs the applications in your cluster with the source of truth, which is usually your Git repo. There's Argo rollouts, which is a way of doing advanced deployment strategies like canary deployments or A/B deployments. And then there's workflows, which in this scenario, in this IDP platform, is used for configuring multi-step CI/CD workflows for your applications. So
Awesome.
what does an engagement with Fairwinds look like? Next slide.
I don't know. What does it look like, Stevie? You
What
tell
does an
me.
engagement? I'm going to tell you about it.
You're the boss.
An engagement with Fairwind. So, we start with mutually agreed upon platform requirements. So we talk through what your needs are, because we are like sort of a white glove service. We're building for you. And then we build your cluster on EKS with standard add-ons, are best in class things, the sort of things that go into all of our clusters, that are kind of table stakes. And then we build out those IDP components for you. So, we configure and build out Backstage and Kubevela and Argo CD and things like that. And then we train your team on how to use these components, right? Because the heavy lifting lies with the platform engineers. Y'all are the ones that are going to be creating these component definitions and things, and determining what is available to your developers. So we're going to help you understand how to do that, and then you're off to the races, and you're deploying your applications through this platform, and you're happy people at the end of the day.
Profit. All right.
So
Thanks,
Andy's going to
Stevie.
do a demo now, which is
I
the most
am.
exciting part.
Yes, and actually I'm going to, so in testing earlier, we've decided that the second demo is far more interesting and very long potentially. So I'm just going to jump straight into that, because this particular demonstration will really illustrate all of those components that Stevie was talking about. So we're going to see Backstage, Argo workflows, Argo CD, Argo rollouts. We're going to see what was the last one? Oh, Kubevela and ACK all in action through this one particular walkthrough. So let's imagine that I'm a Rust developer. Cue laughter. I am not a Rust
Rusty.
developer, but let's imagine I am a Rust developer and I have written this lovely backend service that needs to pair with this front end here that we have running that is very upset because it doesn't have a backend. And so I want to deploy this Rust backend via this fancy, amazing platform that my platform engineers have provided to me. So I'm going to go to Backstage and I'm going to say I really would like to create something here. And I believe maybe I got logged out, which is why the create button doesn't work. So I'm going to log in and I'm going to say, I really need some CI/CD to be able to deploy this application. So I'm going to deploy a CI/CD pipeline. The app is just called Rust. We saw that in my Git repository. All of this is going to happen in EU Central 1 because that just happens to be where we've put it. Relative path to the Docker file. So we'll see here, I've already, as a wonderful developer, written a delightful Docker file with a multi-step build and everything here. So it's just sitting there in the root of the repository, and I'm going to put all my deployment stuff in this deployment folder. This deployment folder just so happens to be pretty much empty at the moment, but it's there. It's got placeholders for dev and prod. We know we're going to have both of those. That's all I need to know. I'm going to hit create, and then a lot of stuff is going to happen really fast, and then some stuff is going to happen really slow. So we're going to talk through what's happening here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to publish a Git repository. So if we go back to our Git source of truth here, we'll see there's a brand new repository here called Rust CI/CD that was created for us. This has the Backstage component information in it, as well as a bunch of manifests that are needed for deploying and building this application. So we'll see we've got Argo CD apps that define where the application code is going to live. We have some Argo events stuff that's going to trigger pipelines. We have some external secrets so that we can interact with our Git repository. And we've got a couple of workflows here specifically for provisioning different things. So that's the first thing that happened. We published the Git repository. Then we're going to do some other stuff that's not as exciting that I'm not going to really go into because it's actually kind of boring and it's a lot of glue stuff. And then we're going to kick off an Argo workflow that will kind of get everything set up for us that hasn't been set up already. So if we click on open in Argo workflows here, what we're going to see is this provisioner and warm up step running. So as with any good Docker deployment, we need a place to put that container. So we've created an ECR registry here, an ECR repository, sorry. And I'm going to go ahead and just go make sure that got created. So we're going to log into our console at uCentral1 here. And we're going to go to ECR and we're going to see, hopefully, that Rust and Rust cache were created just a few moments ago. So we have both of those here. We have repositories available to us. We've added a webhook to our Rust repository. So we're going to be able to kick off CI/CD jobs. So if we go look in the Rust repository under webhooks, we have one pointing to our Argo events installation in the platform for Rust. So that should work nicely for us. And then we're doing this warm-up step. So this warm-up step is going to go ahead and grab that Docker file, build the image, and push it along with its subsequent build steps into the cache. So we're basically warming up the ECR repository here. So this is the part that takes a minute, which is why I've been talking over it, because it does take quite a few moments to get this running. The other thing that we will see has happened is we've created an Argo CD app. So if we go to the catalog here and we see we have an Argo CD app, a couple of Argo CD apps here. So if we navigate to our Argo CD dashboard here, and actually I'm just going to go to the top level, I'm going to type in Rust. What we'll see is we have an app of apps here called Rust. This points to our Git repository under Rust CI/CD, so that CI/CD repo we were just looking at. And within that, we know that there were several manifests. Two of those were application manifests. So we have an app of apps pattern here. So we have a Rust dev CD. This is going to be where our application gets deployed. We'll notice here, all we have is an application. There's nothing here because if you'll potentially remember, in our Rust CI/CD repository, in our deployment dev folder, there is nothing here. So there's nothing to deploy just yet, but we will do that rather shortly or not shortly, depending on how long this takes to run. Other things that we can see here in the catalog, the Backstage catalog, obviously we have our Argo CD connection. We can go directly to the repo from here. If we have relationships with other applications, we can show those. The other thing that we see, which is really nice, is instead of having to go look for Rust CI/CD jobs in our Argo workflows UI, we have them all listed right here and what status they're in. So this is the one that's currently running. This is that provisioner. As we go down the road and do some deployments to this, we'll see all of those jobs show up here. So we have kind of a one-stop shop to be able to see all of the workflows, CI/CD. We can even add documentation to this for our application. It's all right here. So this is our developer portal. This is the place where all of our things will be. And then while that's still running, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start preparing to deploy this application. So we're going to jump into the terminal here. I'm in my Rust repository. I'm just going to pull it real quick, make sure I've got the latest bit. I'm going to copy a pre-written manifest I have here. It's relatively straightforward. We're going to walk through it. I'm going to put this in the dev folder. This is our application manifest. So this is kubevela and ACK working together to give us the ability to specify an entire application in one YAML spec. So we're going to call this Rust app, and it has several components to it. This particular backend happens to store all of its information in a DynamoDB table. So we're going to ask for that DynamoDB table right here. We have a few different things that we need to set, but if you've ever built a DynamoDB table, you know there is a whole lot more configuration that could go into this. This is built into the platform. So our platform engineers have built a standard definition and they say, this is what a DynamoDB table is. It has these defaults. You can change these few things. So here's what I'm changing about them. I'm going to need some IAM for that particular Rust backend pod to be able to talk to that DynamoDB table to interact with it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add IAM policies, and then we're going to create a service account in the cluster that will bind to that specific IAM policy and allow us to access that DynamoDB table. Then the last thing we need, shocking, we need an actual deployment of our backend. I know we're all shocked by that, but we have a Rust backend. We're going to use this type appmod service. So this is another piece that's pre-built into the platform for us. This is a standard application. This is what a service should look like according to how our platform engineers have built it. That's going to give us several different things. It's going to give us the ability to auto scale if we want. It's going to give us rollouts so that when we do deployments, we can roll out in different ways. So there's a ton more options for this application that we could specify. But right now, I just need a dev backend. I just need a container running. So it runs on port 8080. I want to expose it on port 80. Here's that service account that I specified. So I wanted to use that. And I want to actually make this backend available outside of the cluster so that our front end can contact it. So I have this path-based ingress, which is going to run on /rust app on port 80. So really, in just 44 lines of YAML, we've defined a complex service that has a backing AWS service behind it. It has an ingress, and it has a whole lot of other features that are available to it. So as the developer, I really only need this template right here. I can tweak a couple of things, and now I've got my application. Hopefully by this time, our warm-up has happened. Yes, it has. That's fantastic. I'm going to pull real quick because there's a little bit of magic that happens right here where the warm-up, having built the image, will take that tag and drop it into this image.txt file inside of my repository. So I'm just going to make sure I pull that down. I'm going to add my application file, and I'm going to deploy to dev. I'm going to push that up. And if we go back to our source of truth here, to our CI/CD pipelines, we'll see we have a new CI/CD workflow running. I'm going to go ahead and close this and this. Actually, I should have done that. The other thing that happens, so this is going to go through that same process of building the image first. So while that's happening, I'm going to show a couple other things. We're going to open up our Argo CD dashboard again. For Rust dev CD. I'm going to give it a little poke. And what we're going to see is all of a sudden a whole lot of things are going to appear out of nowhere because I just added that application YAML. And so all the things that application YAML allows me to create are now getting created. So we'll see that this DynamoDB table is getting created. We've got a pod identity association. We have some external secrets to be able to access stuff. We have Kyverno policies. There's a lot of things built into this application that are going to get applied that are specified by my platform team. The only other thing we're going to see here is that this pod has started up via this Argo rollout, but it is going to fail for a little bit because it has an invalid image name. The one thing I maybe failed to mention here is our image name is a placeholder. So this is how our CI/CD pipeline is going to deploy new images, is by replacing that placeholder. So right now, everything else is being spun up. I believe if we go back here to our console, we should see a DynamoDB table having been created for our use. Yep, so we have our Rust service table, partition key, sort key, as we specified earlier. that is active and available, ready for us to use as soon as our build is done. Everything else in here is healthy, except for this. We're not going to worry about that little guy. And we're looking good. Maybe we'll build a little faster now that we've warmed the cache, but it is going to take a couple seconds. I'll use this moment to remind everybody you are welcome to ask all the questions in the world. If you have them, please drop them in the chat. Stevie will gladly interrupt me and ask them out loud for you. She does not mind at all.
Any chance to interrupt Andy is a-okay with me.
Yeah, I
And
figured
he
you
means
would say
literally
that.
all the questions in the world. So,
Ooh,
you know.
that might have been a dangerous offer there. Might have been a dangerous offer. The other thing that we can look at, so we also have, oh, I have to tweak this to make it work, but we do have the ability to expose Kubernetes resources in our dashboard as well. Let me go just tweak that real fast. So this is the catalog info. This is the thing that powers the Backstage component for us here. So if I change this up and I use Kubernetes label selector app equals Rust backend, and I commit that to this repo, and we go back and we refresh our friend here. Hopefully we'll see some Kubernetes resources at some point pop up there. So we have the ability to show a lot of what's happening with this application here. We could pull in metrics, we could pull in lots of other things. So this particular portal is rather powerful and gives us a lot of insight without really making everybody go log into Argo workflows, Argo CD, you know, and the various other places.
Yeah, this is great for giving your devs to enabling them to be able to help themselves when something goes wrong, or you know, instead of having to give them cluster access and things like that, they can just go to this single pane of glass and really be able to inspect their applications.
And one thing I'd
Absolutely.
like to add in there, we also have in the works with, speaking of metrics, and you're seeing how efficient this can be of just put in a few variables you need, maybe just the name if it's a really straightforward one like that Rust CI/CD pipeline, and it does all the processing in the back end. While it may take 5-10 minutes to deploy, it would take them hours, if not even longer, especially if they were brand new, to do it otherwise. And we're working as well to add in our reInvent branch, as I believe you'll see in there, we have some DORA metrics that's also in the works that should be released relatively soon. And these DORA metrics allow you to even measure platform success, where as they're deploying all these, it can measure these key aspects of things along the nature of, say, how long does it take them to go from ideation to production? How long does it take to do this one upgrade of some kind? And it can measure these things, and that way you can report straight up to management, like, hey, we just got this platform. How good is it? Is it just like an experimental thing for the developers? No, look at this hard data of just all these advantages it's done. Time is money. Look how effective this is. Awesome. So just one other call I'd like to add in there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm excited to see that. So our image build has finished. So what we have done, if I just go ahead and pull my repository, we can see what happened. So we have a new image.txt and we have a modified application YAML. So what we'll see in there is that we have this most recently built image as our image tag now. And so if we go to our Rust CI/CD, I'm going to guess it's been long enough. I don't have to kick this. Nope, I'm going to have to kick it manually. Just do a little hard refresh. May speed things up just a touch here for demo purposes. We'll see we have a new pod. It's already running. And we have a lovely Kyverno policy report object here that's going to tell us everything that's wrong with that. I'm not going to open that just yet or at all during this demo because I don't want to know. But we have a running pod, which means in theory, if we refresh our lovely application, our backend is running. So we now have a fully functional app that has been deployed end to end. So that is just scratching the surface of what we can do here. This is really just showing all the different pieces interacting with each other. Obviously, I can't spend 15 minutes and show you the full depths of everything that's happening in here. There is a ton. We've been at this for months, learning how it works and learning how it all works together. It's fantastic. And there's lots of different things we can do with it. But from a developer perspective, I'm happy. I have an application that's working. If I want to go to prod, all I have to do is copy this application YAML, maybe change a URL or two, copy it into prod, and it'll get deployed to prod in the same way. If I want to roll out a new version of it, all I have to do is commit. And now I have new versions of my application rolling out with Argo rollouts enabled, with metrics enabled, with policy here as blessed and defined by my platform team. So I think this really shows fully end to end all of the benefits that we could get here. Any questions on that or other thoughts, Stevie, Eli?
I was just thinking of how nice it is as a developer. One of as we've been talking about shifting left in terms of security and reliability, how nice it is because instead of having, some UI that pops up and tells you, no, you can't do this. You made a mistake. You didn't set your resources and request, or, you're not allowed to deploy this thing. And then you have to go back and make these manual changes to the manifest and figure out where you're supposed to put them. You have platform engineers who have already created these guardrails for you in what you can deploy. Like they've used the component definition to say these are the things that are going to be available to you, and so you don't have to have that happen anymore. Because I imagine that's pretty frustrating for developers, right? To have this like cycle of submit this thing. Oh no, that's wrong. Okay, submit it again. Nope, that's wrong. So I think that's a really nice feature of this.
And especially if you're just a newer person to a team, having to on ramp on how a specific team does all their specific stuff. And then if you ever transfer to another team or you had sub teams in there and they have totally different processes, you got to relearn how they all work, their own little glue on it. But if it can all be very seamless across your whole organization, that's what drastically can reduce your training times immensely, which leads to a lot of saved time and money.
You sound like you're speaking from experience there, Eli.
I've seen some
shifted
interns
around
and I'm
some
like, if I had to
teams.
teach them every part of that, good Lord, that would, I'd lose it there.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So we do have a question. How does this plug in different CSP? How does this platform plug into different CSPs? Can you show us any configuration to connect to underlying K8s cluster? Probably this setup is already done for this demo. Trying to think of the best way to answer that. There is a lot of setup already done for this demo. I will say that is absolutely true. Everything is in the repository that Eli shared earlier. So that app mod blueprints is basically the source of truth for everything that we did today. It builds out pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
As far as
There's
plugin,
go
ahead.
No, you go. I was just gonna say there are the AWS team has made some very useful entry scripts that take care of, so depending on where you are with your cluster, it takes care of bootstrapping clusters for you, and setting up like IAM principles and things like that. But the scripts really do take care of deploying all of these components to your cluster. Like they can do that for you. So that is the plumbing. So if you go and inspect those files, I think that'll inform you on how you connect it to your Kubernetes cluster, because it's really just a matter of installing these things to your cluster and how you install these components just like you install anything else. We've leaned into Argo CD here. So for the most part, it's Argo CD, and the current iteration is a combination of that and Terraform. But that I think is changing with the reInvent branch. But that's pretty much where you would find that information.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the other note, I'm guessing CSP here refers to other cloud providers. I'm not 100% certain on that acronym, but everything here is 100% Kubernetes native. The only thing that is specific to AWS that we showed in this demo was provisioning DynamoDB via ACK. But everything else in here is Kubernetes native. And so if you have needs to deploy to other places, you can do that. I know there's lots of multi-cloud out there at the moment, and it's a big conversation. So
I could definitely add into that as well, Andy. So we are also positioning this as a cloud agnostic open source aspect of it, building on our Canoe, which is AWS's open source thing. Definitely would recommend looking into Canoe if you haven't before. But our Canoe initiative with this, we're trying to set this up in a way where you really can deploy this on cross clouds, but AWS is trying to show that we'd be the best option for it within there with our expansiveness that we built out on it, and trying to get our foot deeper into the open source community with projects like this. And on the side of the configuring clusters, one thing I would like to add that we're adding in this reInvent branch that definitely would encourage getting to check it out. I really like the major changes we've done recently. It's still conceptually all the same main things. It's more tactical choices and improving quality of life in different aspects, like moving away from Terraform for the K8s resources deployments and such, or just a simple like YAML files and such, or different configuration value files and such. You can put your, I'd like to use GitLab, or I'd like to use GitHub. Just pick which one you want, depending whether or not they're hit true or false and such, depending on which cluster you're deploying. It'll say, okay, I'll deploy these, not deploy those other ones. Much more straightforward, and it's more seamless than how Terraform was initially that we did to just get it up and running, so to speak. So now we're working on that refining aspect, but the core aspect of it's there, and definitely would encourage checking out those repos.
awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, we went over the offering that we are providing here, but also we are just available to chat anything Kubernetes and platforms. So we do have a link on our website to book a call with us if you want to talk strategy. There's also our marketplace listing here for the IDP Quick Start. We also have a ton of open source out there under the Fairwinds Ops GitHub organization. There's in every one of those READMEs, I think there is a link to join our Slack community. So please feel free if you want to reach out to Fairwinds and talk open source, IDPs, Kubernetes, please feel free to do that. And with that, I will leave it open for questions if there are any more for a moment. Is anything
I would
else
also like to
you have?
chime in that the survey, if you could also go to the next slide, also
Yep.
has the survey link there as well. I also threw in the links to the previous slide in chat as well. It's easier to click on that on your computer. And if you could just take a few moments, please fill out the survey. It would mean a lot to me. Really give me some hard data on here to improve on this. So please. Well, I really appreciate y'all's time on that. And again, if you have any questions, we have about 11 minutes here. Happy to talk them out. Otherwise, happy to give you some time back.
Survey is super helpful. Customer and end user feedback is pure gold, and we all love having it.
Boy, and it can always help improve our solution in general.
Absolutely.
So very much appreciated. Yeah, I guess unless there's anything else, really appreciate everyone's time. Again, please check out the links in here, copy and put them to the side if that's easier for later. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Bye.